Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are taking you to a place and time that feels both incredibly glamorous and deeply grim. We're going to New York City in 1906.
Mm.
And this isn't just a straightforward crime story. We are diving into the very heart of Manhattan's theater world, the Tenderloin District, a place where, the spotlight and the shadows were practically one and the same.
Exactly. We're stepping right into the case files of a detective named Simon Ziele. And Ziele is fascinating because he's a veteran who he very deliberately tried to escape the city. He was planning this quiet, peaceful life in a small village called Dobson.
Right, he wanted out.
He wanted out, but he gets pulled right back in by his old partner, Captain Mulvaney, to face a killer. Well, a killer whose crimes weren't just murders. They were these elaborate, macabre theatrical productions.
And that contrast is so key, isn't it? The man seeking quiet forced to confront this explosion of theatrical
It
violence.
defines his whole journey.
So our mission in this deep dive is, well, it's pretty ambitious. We need to unpack this killer's incredibly sophisticated motivations, which are all tied up in literature and art.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to analyze the poetic evidence he leaves behind and ultimately, reveal how this master manipulator could frame an innocent man right under the glare of the Broadway lights.
And the first scene is designed to do just that, to disorient everyone, the police and, us. It all begins at the Garrick Theater. Detective Ziele gets the call, and it's immediately clear this is not a standard homicide.
The victim is a young woman named Annie Germain. She's a chorus girl in a play called The Shepherd's Daughter.
But when Ziele gets there, what he sees isn't a chorus girl. The killer has meticulously staged her. She's on the stage, dressed to look exactly like the production star, Ms. Bowen.
Wait, so she's wearing the lead's costume?
The lead's costume, her very distinctive and expensive wig, all of the famous stage jewels. And get this, all of it was taken from a wardrobe closet that was locked.
Okay, so the key is missing. That immediately points to someone with inside access.
It screams intention and access.
Yeah.
This isn't a random act. The killer had time, he had skill, and he had, this intimate knowledge of how that theater worked.
But what really threw the police, from what I understand, was the body itself.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
The veteran coroner, a Dr. Max Wilcox, he famously noted that there was, and this is a quote, not a mark on her.
No bruises, no cuts, nothing.
Nothing. No visible trauma, no sign of a struggle. And you have to remember, in an era where most murders were, pretty brutal stabbings, blunt force of death with no physical evidence is a huge problem.
It's a mystery from the word go.
It is. And it allows the police to default to the path of least resistance, which is suicide. Wilcox initially calls the cause of death inconclusive, but the staging itself, this glamorous transformation into the star.
It fits a certain narrative.
It fits the narrative perfectly. A depressed, ambitious chorus girl taking her own life in some kind of a tragic final performance. It was the first, and I'd argue, the most important layer of the killer's whole deception.
And if that had been the only death, maybe the story would have just ended right there. Another tragedy in a city full of them.
I think it would have, especially in the theater world of 1906, which was just ruthless. I mean, young women could disappear, and if there was an easy explanation, nobody looked too hard.
Okay, so let's unpack how we get from this single strange tragedy to a full-blown pattern of terror. Captain Mulvaney, Ziele's old boss, he was holding back.
Oh, he was definitely holding back. He was trying to control the story, control the panic.
Yeah.
But Ziele finds out pretty quickly that Annie Germain wasn't the first victim. She was the second.
The second. So who was the first?
3 weeks earlier, an actress named Eliza Downs. She worked at the Empire Theater, which, and this is crucial, was another venue owned by the same incredibly powerful man, Charles Frohman, and his syndicate.
And the circumstances were similar.
Eerily identical. Staged on the stage, dressed in an elaborate costume, and, immediately assumed to be a suicide. The police weren't even called in until Annie Germain's body was found.
Wow. So they completely missed the first murder.
Completely missed it.
Yeah.
The killer's staging was just that effective. It shows you how easily these women could be dismissed. But the real connection, the thing that finally links them, it isn't the costumes or the syndicate, it's the literary evidence.
This is where it gets really strange. This is the Pygmalion enigma.
That's the one. At both crime scenes, the killer left a letter. It was written on this very distinctive blue paper in what was described as a precise, spidery hand. And both letters made a direct reference to playing Pygmalion.
A myth. So Ziele realizes he's out of his depth. He needs an expert.
He needs intellectual horsepower the average cop just doesn't have. So he brings in Alistair Sinclair, who is this established criminological expert, and his widowed daughter-in-law, Isabella, who is brilliant with literature.
So before we get to what they found, let's just clarify the myth itself, because it's the core of the whole motive here.
Right. And they get the explanation from an actor, Timothy Poe, who had just starred in a revival of a play about it. Poe explains it very simply. Pygmalion is a sculptor. He carves a statue of a woman, Galatea, who is so perfect he falls in love with his own creation.
And a goddess brings her to life for him.
Venus brings her to life. But here's the twist. The living, breathing, imperfect woman. She disappoints him. He realizes he actually preferred her in marble form, fixed and unchanging.
Oh, that is chilling. So the killer is using this as a justification. Is that what Alistair figured out?
Immediately, Alistair's analysis was that the killer's goal isn't passion or robbery, it's preservation. He takes these chorus girls, these minor actresses, and he transforms them into his perfect image with the costumes and the staging.
And once they're perfect.
Once they're perfect, he has to freeze them that way. Reality will only disappoint. So murder becomes this necessary act to preserve the perfection of his art. They were aesthetic victims.
That is a level of cold, detached control that's it's hard to fathom. And the clues went even deeper than just the Pygmalion reference.
Much deeper. This is where Isabella's literary expertise was so vital. She realized the letters also contained direct quotes from famous works. And these quotes were basically a how-to guide for a bloodless murder.
Okay, like what?
She found a line from Robert Browning's poem, Porphyria's Lover, a very notorious poem. And the line is, "I found a thing to do and strangled her."
And in that poem, the narrator strangles her with her own hair, right? A soft ligature. It wouldn't leave much of a mark.
Precisely. And then the second quote was from Shakespeare's Othello, where he talks about smothering Desdemona, "Nor scar that whiter skin of hers than snow."
Another murder method designed to leave the victim's body physically unmarked.
Exactly. So the connection is brilliant and, frankly, sickening. The killer isn't just showing off his education. He is telling the police, through two of the most famous examples in literature, exactly how he got that "not a mark on her" result.
It's the perfect signature. It confirms Dr. Wilcox's suspicion that the killer used a soft ligature and had, considerable skill. It's a clean murder designed to look like a clean suicide.
And Alistair knew right away. This level of planning, this kind of intellectual game, they were dealing with a psychopath who was never going to stop on his own. The pattern was set, and the police were already weeks behind.
So they have this incredible literary profile, a clear MO, and a sense of the killer's psychology. But the authorities, especially Mulvaney, they were more worried about politics than poetry.
That's putting it mildly. Armed with this profile, the smart move would be to look for someone with deep literary and theatrical connections, right?
Of course.
Instead, Captain Mulvaney, who is feeling immense pressure from Frohman's syndicate to close the case, he fixates on the most convenient target imaginable, the actor Timothy Poe.
The same actor who explained the myth to them.
The very same. For Mulvaney, it was perfect. Poe had the title role in that Pygmalion revival, which was just too big a coincidence to ignore. And he was the only male lead from that show who was still in the city. Everyone else was on tour.
He was an easy arrest, a quick way to calm the public down.
And then the press basically does Mulvaney's dirty work for him. They start digging into Poe's private life, and they expose his most carefully guarded secret.
Which was that he was living in the Black and Tan district with his lover, Walter, who was an African-American man.
And in 1906 New York, that was it was career suicide, at the very least. You have to understand the power Charles Frohman's syndicate wielded. They demanded what they called sterling behavior.
A strict moral code.
An incredibly strict moral code. Your public image had to be pristine. And Poe knew that if this came out, he'd be blacklisted, not just fired, but exiled from the entire industry. He would never work again.
So that pressure makes him act erratically. He runs, he lies to the police at first.
And Mulvaney sees that as guilt. He doesn't see a man terrified of losing his entire life and livelihood. He sees a murderer trying to escape.
But the real killer, he's not done. He's not going to let the police chase a false lead and close the book.
No, he escalates drastically. The third murder is Emmeline Billings. She's found at the New Amsterdam Theater. Another Frohman syndicate venue, of course.
And the staging of this one was different. It was more aggressive.
It was a huge psychological shift. She wasn't just laid out on the stage. She was hoisted up, high up, and pinned to the stage curtains with dozens and dozens of sewing needles. It was this spectacular, defiant display, a death pose meant to mimic the appearance of life.
Like a broken puppet.
Exactly, like a broken puppet hanging in the spotlight. It felt less like he was preserving her in marble and more like he was actively attacking the theater itself. And he added a new, terrifying element.
The booby trap.
The booby trap. A young detective, Marwin. He's trying to carefully cut the body down, and he gets stabbed. The killer had hidden a hypodermic needle among the sewing needles, right where anyone would have to reach.
So he's targeting the investigation now.
He is. Marwin gets critically ill from whatever was on that needle. The message was crystal clear. You interfere with my art, and you will pay a price.
And then he starts advertising his work.
That's the height of the arrogance. He sends a third letter, but this one goes to the Times. And in it, he gives advance warning of the New Amsterdam killing, referring to it as the theater under the stars.
He's taunting them. He wants the notoriety.
He's building his own legend, just like Jack the Ripper did with his letters. And to top it off, this letter had an acrostic. The first letter of each line spelled out, "Hell awaits."
Unbelievable. But even with all this evidence pointing to a highly intelligent, manipulative killer, Mulvaney just wanted an arrest. And he thought he had his man.
He did. His men finally found what they were looking for at the New Amsterdam. Fingerprints. And the fingerprints matched Timothy Poe.
So Poe is arrested.
Arrested immediately. He's protesting, saying he was framed, but nobody's listening. The case seems closed. But Ziele and Alistair, they're not convinced. The profile just doesn't fit the man.
Poe seems more like a victim of circumstance than a master manipulator.
Exactly. So they push for one last forensic check. They turn to a Dr. Volman, who is a forensic handwriting expert.
And this is the key piece of objective evidence, right? The one thing that can cut through all the framing and the circumstantial stuff.
It is. Volman does this incredibly detailed analysis. He compares the killer's cold, meticulous letters on the blue paper to a long, rambling confession letter that Poe wrote after his arrest when he was completely agitated and distraught.
And what did he find?
He focused on two things: consistency and disguise. The killer's spidery hand had this consistent but fake leftward slant. It was deliberate disguise. But at the end of some paragraphs, it would unconsciously drift back to the right. It was a classic sign of someone trying to hide their natural handwriting.
And Poe's writing didn't have that.
Not at all. Poe's handwriting was a mess, reflecting his panicked state, but there was no sign of deliberate, controlled disguise. Volman's conclusion was definitive. They were looking at two completely different writers. The psychological states were just incompatible.
The fingerprints must have been planted.
Must have been. Lifted from a prop or a glass, something Poe had touched. The killer had successfully framed him, using Poe's own social vulnerability, the fear of being outed, to make the police and the public believe he was guilty.
So Ziele now knows for sure. He's hunting a ghost. Someone who can operate in plain sight, manipulate evidence, and the whole time, the man he framed is sitting in a jail cell.
And Frohman, the theater magnate, he just wants the whole thing to go away. He gets Ziele officially sidelined. But it's too late. Ziele knows the truth, and he has to go rogue to find the real Pygmalion killer.
Okay, so at the moment the framing is confirmed, the whole investigation has to pivot, right? Back to one constant in all of this, Charles Frohman's theater syndicate.
Every victim, every location, it all leads back to him. Ziele knows he has to confront the man himself. So he and Isabella, who can, speak the language of art and theater, they go to the Knickerbocker Hotel, which is Frohman's base of operations.
And how does that meeting go?
It's a total clash. Frohman is this picture of corporate control. He just sees Ziele as an annoyance, a disruption to his business. He flat out denies there's even a pattern.
Which is when Ziele has that great line, one victim is a coincidence, three form a pattern.
But Frohman just sees it as bad press. He's more worried about his syndicate's reputation for sterling behavior than he is about his murdered employees.
And that idea of sterling behavior, that control over their lives, that's where Ziele finds the next clue.
Yes. He starts pressing Frohman about the victims' private lives and finds another pattern. 2 of the 3 dead women had recently been courted by a new beau, a suitor who sent them expensive gifts and promised to make them stars.
The killer wasn't just watching from a distance. He was grooming them. He was playing the part of a suitor.
He was playing Pygmalion in every sense. The creator, the suitor, and then the destroyer. All in one. But Frohman is completely uncooperative, so Ziele has to find another way.
Right, so how did he get the actual name? How did he find Kobe?
Well, knowing Frohman would stonewall him, Ziele uses a bit of chaos to his advantage. There's a late-night costuming crisis at the Knickerbocker, And while Frohman is distracted, Ziele slips into his administrative office.
What's he looking for?
He's looking for anyone Frohman might have rejected, insulted, blacklisted. He's digging through piles of angry letters, discarded headshots, and that's where he finds it. Buried in a file, he finds scripts by a rejected playwright, a man named Robert Coby.
Robert Coby, that's the first real lead they've had.
The first concrete name. So the investigation shifts completely. They have to find Coby, and they have to find his motive. And that leads zealous Alistair out of the city, away from Broadway, to the quiet summer colony of Shelter Island.
And there they find Coby's family.
They find his aunt, a Mrs. Layton.
Mm-hmm.
And she tells him a story that reveals the true source of this decades-old grudge.
This wasn't just some random act of madness. It was rooted in a family tragedy.
A tragedy caused by Frohman. Robert Coby's mother, Elaine, had been a very promising actress in Frohman's company years ago, but she got pregnant. And for Frohman, that was a violation of his moral behavior standard.
So he blacklisted her.
He destroyed her career, cut off all her income, drove her from the city in disgrace, and she later committed suicide by walking into the bay with her pockets full of rocks.
My God. So Coby grew up believing Charles Frohman murdered his mother?
He did. And he saw all the young actresses working for the syndicate as, in his words, whores to the success he promises, traitors to his mother's memory.
And they find proof of this out on the property.
Oh, yes. In a deserted, decaying woodshed. Ziele and Alistair break in, and it's a workshop of horrors. They find Coby's journals, where he details his plans and his rage. They find his rejected scripts. They find these chilling Pygmalion postcards.
One with a baby on it.
One with a baby on it. Representing his mother's failure, his own lost childhood. But the most horrifying discovery confirms Coby's been at this for a very, very long time.
The hand.
A skeletal hand, wearing a very distinctive sapphire and diamond ring, hidden in an old trunk. This proves he had a victim long before the recent killings.
So they bring in a paleontologist, Professor Lohman, to examine it.
Right, and Lohman confirms two things. The hand is female, and it has a well-healed fracture on the thumb, a very specific identifying injury.
And Alistair recognizes the ring.
He recognizes it as something a socialite would wear. They track down a Mrs. Vandergriff, who confirms the ring belonged to her daughter, Francine, who had been missing for 5 years. And of course, Francine had broken her thumb as a child.
Francine Vandergriff, the first victim, the one who turned Coby into the killer.
And Mrs. Vandergriff, in her grief, provides a photograph of Francine. And standing right there in the background, smiling, is a man Ziele recognizes instantly.
Jack Bogarty, the theater critic for the Times.
Jack Bogarty is Robert Coby. He's been hiding in plain sight for 5 years, investigating his own crimes, writing about them in the paper, all while composing these beautiful, tender poems about the lost Francine, which her grieving mother later had published.
The disconnect is just staggering. The sensitive artist persona was the perfect camouflage for the monster.
It was the ultimate disguise. It gave him access, gave him information, and it gave him an alibi that no one would ever think to question.
So with Bogarty identified as Coby, Ziele knows the clock is ticking. The big Romeo and Juliet premiere is coming up, and its star, Helen Bell, is the obvious next target.
Bogarty's grand finale, a huge, public, symbolic act to end his campaign of terror. Ziele has to move incredibly fast, and he needs a plan that involves a level of deception that, well, only one person he knows can pull off.
He goes to his estranged father.
He does, and this relationship is so complex. Ziele partly left the city to get away from his father, this man buried in gambling debt, living on the fringes, but he was also a master of disguise.
A true artist in his own way.
Absolutely. Grease paint, wigs, prosthetics. He was brilliant. So Ziele has to call in this huge favor, one that's loaded with all this personal history, to get his father to transform Molly Anson,
Coby's cousin.
Coby's own cousin, into a perfect double for Helen Bell. It's an incredibly risky, desperate plan to try and lure Bogarty into a trap.
The stage is set at the Lyceum Theater. Molly is the bait, disguised as the intended victim. But the plan goes wrong almost immediately.
It does, because Molly Hanson reveals she's not a victim. She's been complicit the entire time.
She was in on it.
She was. She confronts Ziele and explains that while she knows Robert has a sickness, she believes his cause is just. She helped him frame Poe. She helped orchestrate the attacks because in her mind, Frohman owed them. He owed her family, owed Coby's mother, for the cruelty that ruined their lives.
So she wasn't protecting a monster. In her eyes, she was protecting family and fighting for a kind of justice.
That's how she saw it, yes. And that motive is confirmed when Bogarty himself appears on the stage. He's covered in alcohol, ready to set the entire theater ablaze. as Helen Bill's funeral pyre.
And what's his final rationale? What does he say?
It's this concise, chilling monologue about his rage. He calls the actresses whores to the success Frohman promises. He says false promises leading to ruin. That was all he ever gave us. Me, my mother, Molly. He sees himself as an executioner delivering justice.
And the climax is just devastatingly personal for Ziele.
It is. His father, sick as he is, he intervenes. He tries to save Molly, creates a distraction, and Bogarty shoots him. In that instant, Ziele fires back and kills Bogarty, ending the killings. But it costs him his father, who in his final moments sort of redeemed their whole broken relationship.
So the case is closed. The killer is dead. They find all the evidence, the journals, in his apartment. But the public reaction is where this story takes its final dark twist.
It's the most culturally significant part of the whole case. Because even with all the evidence, the journals, the bodies, a huge portion of the public refuses to believe it. They can't accept that the sensitive, critically acclaimed theater critic, the poet, could be a vicious killer.
They preferred the art to the reality.
The elegance of the art blinded them to the horror of the crime. And in this final, profound act of denial, Francine Vandergrift's mother publishes Bogarty's book of poetry, A Prayer for Francine.
And it's successful.
It's met with great critical acclaim. In the end, Bogarty's artistic persona, the sensitive poet, completely outlives and overshadows his monstrous actions. His art won.
And what about Ziele? He's left with the fallout. He's paid off his father's massive debt, watched him die.
That experience changes him completely. His whole plan was to retreat to Dobson, to find peace and quiet. But after all this, after seeing his father's final selfless act, he makes a different choice.
He stays in New York.
He stays. He decides to embrace the chaos, the possibilities unexplored. He realizes he might be his father's son, after all. Not the gambler, but the man willing to take risks, to operate in the gray areas to get the job done. The case seals his fate as a detective of that dark, complicated city.
What a story. We've seen corporate cruelty fuel a vendetta that lasts for decades, a killer who used high literature as both a weapon and a calling card, and the perfect framing of an innocent man. Yeah. The sophistication of Robert Coby, of Jack Bogarty as an artist, gave him a kind of immunity that, a common thug would never have.
And that, I think, is the central, shocking idea for us to really think about. It isn't the brutality of the crimes that's so stunning. It's the seamless overlap between what we call artistic genius and what we know is extreme violence. The beauty of his poetry, his public image, it gave him this cultural camouflage. It raises a really profound question. If a murderer's work is celebrated as beautiful, does society become complicit in minimizing their crimes by elevating the arc above the action?
Wow.
This is a case where the artist's legacy, in the end, almost entirely erased the man's horrific deeds. It leaves us admiring the beautiful sculpture while trying very hard to ignore the corpse that's hidden inside the marble.
Something to think about. Thank you for diving deep with us.